Oh, I have to click broadcast too, eh?
All right.
Oh, no.
How's everybody doing? We're live on YouTube, Javan.
It's the live situation I always wanted to have.
So welcome everybody. I'm here with Javan, Kerby Bernakovich, and we're going to be talking about regenerative business tonight. So feel free to post any questions or comments you've got in the comment feed below, and we'll do our best to answer it. So in the meantime, we thought we'd start with talking a little bit about why two permaculture designers, regenerative teachers, people out there, basically generally ecologists, engineers, that we are launching a business program. It seems like a strange step out in right field. And a few years ago, Javan and I were teaching a permaculture design course, and we ended up doing a session on how to start a regenerative business and what kind of opportunities we saw, having been in the industry for a significant period of time now. And the students were so stoked about that session, and Javan and I got really excited about it as well. And we realized that there's a lot of our students out there that have started businesses and are constantly asking us questions, and we just weren't really making ourselves available to provide assistance to them. And so Regenerative Business was launched, and it didn't take too long. We sat on it for a long time, but it didn't take too long once the idea was hatched to make it live. And so here we are.
It was a pretty interesting time because there was a number of students there. It was a big class. I think it was like 30, 35 folks in the class. And one of the main things that kept coming up was, what do you guys see in business? What have you guys done? And then a lot of like point specific questions about, what do you do for contracting? How do you do promotion? What's marketing like? How do you do your taxes? What kind of automation do you use? It seemed like there was questions from all areas. And as we were asking these questions over and over again, or as we were being asked these questions, we thought to ourselves, there's got to be other people who are interested in this, because we talked to so many of our clients and our colleagues and our partners and even each other, to the point to where we found an incredible amount of value just leveling up with each other by asking these types of questions. You know, what's going on with you? What's happening? Where are we at? What are the pieces that are going on? And this really allowed us to kind of come down to the idea of, well, why don't we offer this to our friends? And I think one of the analogies that Rob uses, which I really love, is this concept of a wave, that there's an incredible wave coming within, and already is here, within the realm and the necessity for regenerative businesses. And just to give you a sense of it, as we take a look at climate adaptability, we had a great onboarding call with a potential student who's going to jump into the Regenerative Business Mentorship Program, level 1, principles 1 through 6, that starts tomorrow. And as we were talking, we found out that they are a climate adaptist biologist. They try to adapt different biomes to the rapid change in climate. Now, it's a great example of a massive wave that's coming. And the big thing is that we all learned how to surf, so to speak, in this area, in this regenerative business conversation, by ourselves. We all learned what not to do, what to do. And so this program was really based around, well, both Rob and I have leveled up on a number of our businesses. We both have consulting businesses. I had a production business. Rob flirted with production businesses. We both have education businesses, and we both have installation businesses, depending on where it is. And we both dabbled with farms and farmers. Not so much dabbled with farmers. We do a lot of consulting with farmers. And it's been really fascinating to pass that information on and help others. So there's no pitch tonight whatsoever. There's no, at the end of this, buy, you're going to get 10% off. If you feel like the program's a good fit, great. We're going to talk about the program. We're going to answer any question that's out there. Great to see Noah. Hola, amigos. Hola, back. Good to see you on there, mate. Any question whatsoever. We have a bit of a form that we're going to go through here. We're going to talk through a couple of pieces. We're going to talk about why this program, which we just did. Who am I? Who's Rob? why are we focusing within this program upon principles and not specific techniques? It's not that we don't talk about techniques, we do, but the primary focus is principles. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about why the format we're doing, why 12 weeks, why having Friday calls, why doing them in video. We're going to talk about all that. And then right at the end, if you're still here and you're keen, we're going to talk about all the major opportunities that Rob and I see are in regenerative business today. Things that you could take up, explore, start to test and see if they're good for you. So that's the open-ended conversation here. If you are on the call, if you're on YouTube Live, feel free like Noah and just give a shout out, say who you are and where you're from. Great to see that Richie's here. Richie's also part of the program, so fantastic to see him. We've got John White. Great to have you, John. If you want to let us know where you're from, that'd be fantastic. And Rob, I'll kick it over to you to give a bit of an introduction, unless you wanted to add to anything that I just said.
No, that's great, Javan. You really kind of summarized it up real well there. So for those of you guys who've never officially met me, my name is Rob Avis. I've been an entrepreneur or in an entrepreneur family my entire life. I grew up in a cake factory. We had a giant cake factory, 40,000 square feet, 125 employees, 20 million a year. It's not in business anymore, actually, but I grew up amongst that type of environment, I guess. And so when I left it, I went into the oil and gas industry for a while, and I knew that I wouldn't be there for very long because this entrepreneurial insanity was coursing through my veins. I just didn't know where I was going to apply myself. And so being in the oil and gas industry for several years, getting my professional designation, more than several years, and working as a consulting engineer, really kind of cut my teeth in engineering, and coupled that with growing up in a cake factory, but really struggling with maintaining status quo. You know, here I was coming from industrial food. Now I was running pipelines and oil and gas facilities and industrial energy. And while all of those things are great because from the perspective that our society requires them right now, wanted to be part of the conversation that was going to show where society could go, as opposed to just staying in the industrial food, industrial energy system. So my wife and I quit our jobs after we came across Jeff Lawton's video, a 3-minute video on greening the desert. If you haven't seen it, it's a wonderful video. And we basically wanted to go and seek solutions. So we went to Denmark. We spent 6 months at a renewable energy institute. We then traveled to parts of Africa, Australia, most of the US, most of Mexico, and basically just started to retrain ourselves. I call it our second master's program. And essentially, when we came back to Calgary, it was really tough to go back to our conventional jobs. And so that was essentially the birthplace of Verge. And from there, we have been teaching PDCs for the last 10 years. I've got a cat here on my right-hand side that wants to join in on the call with us. And so over the last 10 years, we've taught over 500 students. A lot of them have started green businesses within the permaculture realm. And I feel really lucky to be surrounded by all these incredible people. And as I said earlier, Javan and I, because Javon's had similar experiences with regards to students starting businesses, we started to notice this trend that we were unable to provide support to these young businesses that were learning all the same hard things that Javan and I had to go through. And so that now we're here. And man, like the Regenerative Business Mentorship program that we did in the last session was just absolutely incredible. I had such a fun time, and it's really awesome to watch where these students are going and taking this information. How about you, Javan? Give us your background there.
It's a great introduction. For folks that didn't catch that, Rob grew up in a cake factory and is really the tallest Oompa Loompa you've ever met. That's the full conversation. He glossed over that, but that's really a conversation. Just wanted to say, great to have Will with us as well. Thanks so much. And anybody else who's on the call and wants to say hello, feel free to put it down in the live chat. And any questions, feel free to start putting them down because we'll hit them as we're going through what we want to talk about. So my name is Javan Kerby Bernakovich. I was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta. I'm a third-generation Calgarian, which comes with it a little bit of stigma. We tend to have a specific kind of type of personage, you could say, sort of get her done. I used to joke that Alberta, the province of Alberta in Canada, was the product of a one-night stand between Texas and Montana, sort of bigger, better buck and lone, rugged woodsman. And it's still hold to be true. Albertans always tend to laugh at it. Everyone kind of feels offended for Albertans, but Albertans know that that's kind of a bit of a piece. I was worked in slave labor with my dad, doing construction for a number of years, almost 10 years of my life. Got into communications, got into marketing, got into advertising, was still doing a lot in environmental education and working with educational skills, which was fantastic. Really enjoyed that. I'm kind of the oldest Boy Scout, as the family likes to call me. And I was working with an environmental education program up in Edmonton called Riverwatch. And I realized that what I wanted to see in the world, the changes I wanted to see, weren't going to be compatible with only working with junior high and high school kids for one day on the river, when some of the kids thought when they got into the boat in the river, it would circle around and come back, because the only time they'd been in a boat was in an amusement park on a log ride, and they would come around. So I thought, this isn't really doing it for me. So I decided to move out to Vancouver Island, take up natural building conversation, got myself into a permaculture design course, and thought this is the beginning of the rest of my life, because you could dive into permaculture forever. And like Rob, it was about 10 years ago, I jumped in head, hands, and feet, like my friends in Cuba like to say. And I've had the opportunity to teach in over 50 PDCs on 4 different continents, with over 650 students, currently teaching with Oregon State University, been teaching with the Agrarians platform internationally, doing great projects with Rob, doing design projects, doing a lot of business and business design. So doing a lot of business evaluations. Hey, I've got this piece of land, I'm thinking about this business, been doing a lot of that. And diving into another great love of mine, which is life design, which is, I was chronically suicidally depressed for 20 years of my life. As a man, there's a lot of stigma around that. And so I came through that, and I've now used a lot of those tools to help other people with some of the major issues that I think we all have in Western civilization, which is, who am I? What are my priorities? Am I living because of my priorities, or am I living because of the things I think I should be because of status? And I've dived into both of this land and life design, and I've really enjoyed it. And the sort of merger between those two, I think in a big part, is business. And Rob called a business in permaculture just a money swale. It's a way to pick up, understand, and put into effect, capture all the resources that we have. And I think that's a really good vocabulary to be playing with. What are the money swales that are accessible to us? I use a lot of regenerative, specifically key line terms. What is the key point of your personage? What are the types of things that are really connected to you, that you can connect with, that you can sync with? Because the key point, the key line in the landscape is the point to where hypothetically we can start to investigate and have the most amount of water capture, or there's clay in that area. There's a couple of indicators. So that's a really good piece that we can pick up from there. And so I've been involved with All Points Land Design, my design and education company. I've got Permaculture BC, which is a British Columbia focus-based permaculture education conversation. And I also have the Javan brand, which I'm just kind of creeps me out to even say, but that's the case that we're in. So all of that's on the go, and that's a bit of an introduction to me. Rob, I see that we've got a few more people here. Do you want to just call them out?
Yeah, sure. Welcome, David, Alex, Naomi, nice to see you. Scott, Dory from Wetaskiwin. Great to have you guys on board. If there's anybody else watching out there, feel free to introduce yourself and post some questions. We've also got a couple of questions here that I think we should talk about. So I think Alex asked, what's the most recent book that you're currently reading? And maybe we should just paraphrase that, Javan, with how you and I both read, because it's kind of interesting.
It's a really good point. So Alex, thanks so much for your question. Thanks for the sweet library. I should kind of do a pan, and you can see the full scope, and I'll do a pan up, and you can see all the books and the myriad of deer and elk horns. We've got a couple hunters in the family. So yeah, first and foremost, how I read, and Rob and I have kind of gone back and forth where we've become pretty good pals and good accountability partners. So we pass a lot of things back and forth, and we've learned the power of accountability. So one of the ways I read is when I get an invitation for a book, and this happened with a great book that Rob suggested years ago called Mastery by Robert Greene. That's Greene with an E. Taking a look at all the masters, the old masters, the new masters, and the major ideas, the principles, the practices that they had. What I did first is I went online and I took a look at all of the summaries, the good summaries I could find. So short summaries, one-page summaries, and I kind of went through all the summaries and I thought, okay, there's enough here to make me interested. And as I looked through the summaries, I thought this is enough. And then I took a look at the format that would be useful. I'm a big fan of audiobooks, big fan of hardcover books, but it just depends where I am in my life. If I'm in a place where I'm active and I've got time for audio, I use audio. If I've got time to sit, I sit, and it all depends on the book. And then when I pick up the book, I try to get access to the book either through the library or free so I can read through the table of contents, which is my next step before I even decide to totally read it. And I read through the whole table of contents. And when I get to a point in the table of contents, a chapter, then I'm like, oh, that sounds really interesting. I flip to the chapter and I read the first couple of paragraphs and I read the last couple of paragraphs. So again, I haven't read the whole book yet. After I've read the first and the back, I go, was this enough? Did it feel like this author is hitting me? Is there enough here to pick up? And if the answer is yes, then it's yes. Fantastic. Now, the next piece is, which is really interesting, is that Mastery is really where I found this. This is a bit of a pretty big life hack because I've increased the number of books I read now. Well, I'll tell you how many books I'm reading, which will give you a sense of how this works and the effect it has. I was listening to the audiobook of Mastery by Robert Greene and reading it at the same time in a digital copy. And what I did was I increased the speed of the audio to increase the way that I followed along. I'd taken 3 different speed reading courses. None of them worked. I never had comprehension and speed. I could always skim fast, but I never really kept anything. And all of a sudden I was increasing my reading speed. So I kept this up for a couple of years, and fast forward to a couple months ago when I was talking with Rob, I had maxed out the advanced reading speed of Audible at 3 times X and was still following along an incredible book, which I absolutely recommend wholeheartedly, which is Exponential Organizations by, I think it's Samil Salik. Is that right, Rob?
Samil Ismail. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah. And I'm going to try and not pull my headset out as I grab it from there we go. Yeah, there we go. There it is right there in all its glory. So I was reading that and I had outstripped the reading capacity. So Alex, to answer your question, this is an incredible book that I would absolutely recommend reading. And this is the compendium to that book. 2 individuals that have both been playing with the same ideas, but come at it from a completely different type of reading. This is the excitable book that'll get you super stoked and has a lot of like step-by-steps. And this is the whole conversation together. This really talks about how exponential organizations are the way of the future, especially as we get into things like artificial intelligence, as we get into robotics, as we get into the computational power that's coming on board. And as we get into a world called the Internet of Things, where all things are interconnected, where all things are becoming smart. Now, this isn't to say that me and Rob are going to pass judgment on this. You'll find that probably we're 2 people that pass very little judgment. We just say, okay, if this is the tool that exists, how do we put this into our world, into our life? The books that I'm currently reading, just to round out the question, I'm reading Your Brain at Work by David Rock again. Highly recommend if you want to know how you work, how you think, and how to improve the way you work on a daily basis. Fantastic. I'm rereading the Magical Life of Trees, or what's the name of that book, Rob?
The Hidden Life of Trees, I think.
The Hidden Life of Trees by that German forester. Been reading that book. I've got 2 books about writing right now I'm reading. One's called Bird by Bird. And the other one is called, it'll come to me at some point. And I'm also listening to Lesser Beasts, which is a great recommendation by Rob about the history of pigs. And I'm listening to a book called More Beautiful Questions about how to ask beautiful questions to clients, to myself, to my colleagues, to my participants. So I'm reading a little bit. What are you reading right now, Rob, that's turning your crank?
Well, I'm actually on I'm on a bit of an information diet. I just broke it yesterday, but for the last 3 months, I've been trying not to read, to be honest, just to absorb in all the stuff that I have read. I'm a complete infoaholic, and I love trying to get through a book, a month when I'm not in my super busy season. But I just started Crush It by Gary, and I pronounced his name wrong today. How do you pronounce it, Javan?
Vaynerchuk.
Vaynerchuk, yeah. Super interesting. It's got some really interesting information there on how to build personal brands, and having some big insights right now about the importance of social media. And I've largely ignored it in the last couple of years, I guess, except for some of the YouTube videos that I've made. But still, I put YouTube videos up and generally have not paid much attention to it. But really having insights right now with regards to where social media fits into the life cycle of a business, I guess. And so far it's been pretty good. The first 2 chapters are a waste of time. I guess it kind of gives you his point of view, but just getting into the meat right now. Next on the list, I've got, there's a few science fiction books that I'm reading or trying to get into. A More Beautiful Question, same as Javan there. And there's another book that was recommended to me by a really great friend called Why Information Grows, and really excited to get into that one. So I really prescribe to this idea of what's Warren Buffett's partner's name, Javan? Do you remember?
Munger, Charlie Munger.
Yeah, Charlie Munger. He crushes books like at an incredible pace, and he attributes that to most of his success. And I think that there's a lot to be said about that. So we had another question up here. David D. Hi, Rob. I've invented a new jigsaw-powered compost screen design. What is the best way to monetize it? I don't know if a patent is worth pursuing because of how fast products are cloned these days. That's really interesting, David. I don't know. What would you say, Javan? What's the best way to monetize? I have a couple of ideas, but I think like right off the bat, I'd have to see it before telling you that this is a good idea or not. But if you thought it had large market appeal, there's like all these crowdfunding. Again, I don't know how much money or time or energy this jigsaw-powered compost screen is going to cost you, but there's probably different levels that you can engage or in terms of how you would launch a product like this. But let's just say there's a jigsaw and you've got a bunch of different parts that fit into the jigsaw to allow the screen to work. And there's like a very key piece, I'm just assuming, that fits into the chuck of the jigsaw and operates the screen. Like right now, it's funny actually, because it's not the same, but kind of the same. I'll just tell you a little bit of a side story. So this summer, my son and daughter and I built a soapbox car. And if Rowan and Naomi, you're watching, how you doing? I'm actually in Regina right now, so I'm not at home. So I think they're watching me on YouTube. Anyways, we built this soapbox car, and it was like the kit was okay. It was quite expensive for what we got in it. It was $125. Not that 125 is a lot, but the quality of the kit was not awesome. And as I was building it, I was coming up with all sorts of ways that I could improve upon it. And I knew in the background that this guy was building thousands of these kits and shipping them all over the world so that dads and sons or dads and daughters could build these little soapbox cars. And after reading Exponential Organizations and Bold, the thing that kept coming to my mind was I need to get a little micro milling machine in my garage, partially so that we can build our own version of the steering system, partially because my kids are homeschooled, and so it would be a really cool project to take them through from start to finish. And then lastly, because I'm totally addicted to entrepreneurship, I was thinking, oh man, we could totally build a business for my kids, building little soapbox car kits, because I know there's a huge market out there, given some of the questions that I was asking this soapbox car guy. And so what's coming to my mind right now for you is build a whole bunch of content about it, put it up onto YouTube, prototype a small little attachment that you can build in your shop using a micro mill or whatever tools you need, and just build a small website and go for it. And probably one of the best books on launching products like this, I would say, is The 4 Hour Work Week or even Lean Startup. two really great books. Probably 4-Hour Workweek would be the one that I would suggest first, because in there, Tim Ferriss details out all sorts of really low-cost ways to test ideas really quickly. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Javan?
Dave, I think what you have is incredible. I remember a friend on Salt Spring Island out on the west coast of British Columbia showing me something similar. And as soon as you said, I think it was Jigsaw, or did you say Recip? Yeah, Jigsaw powered. He had a Recipsaw powered. So basically it helped to shake, and it had a screen conversation. So that way it came down, and, you know, maybe what you're talking about. But I always think about what's easy. That's my favorite question. How can this be easy? I think the easiest way to do this is to show people videos of using it, to put those videos online, and to gauge the interest. So I would make a couple of videos, you know, this is what I did, this is the situation, this is how to use it, and here's the effect. And this is a main thing that Rob and I talk about, is that when we're speaking about our businesses, we tend to talk about the boat. And so we think about this as the people that we're trying to help are on Island A, the Isle of Woe. This is from our good friend Ted Hargrave, Marketing for Hippies. So people we're trying to help, our clients are on Island A, the Isle of Woe, and they're trying to get over to the Isle of Wow, the place to where their solutions are. And we as ship captains are taking them, ferrying them from Island A to Island B. Now, we tend to really like to talk about our boat, but truthfully, when was the last time you cared about the rivets on a Boeing 747 as opposed to the experience of going from one place to another and getting there, or getting in a vehicle, or having a bicycle ride? Sure, there's some of us that are absolutely fascinated by the bits and the bobs and all the pieces in there, but more often than not, the people who we're working with, our clientele, want to know, can we get there? So show them what this does for them. Show them that it screens, shows it that it saves time, money, and energy, and that generally you can pick up a recip saw that's a little bit broken for cheap, etc., yada, yada. That'll give you what I think is probably the most important thing, which Rob and I talk about a lot in the program, which is gives you an inventory of interest. Who out there is interested? So I put together a video a couple years ago with my buddy Brandon about a charcoal maker that also produced heat as a byproduct and had a water jacket on it. It's one of the most popular videos I put out, and I always get these questions. When are you going to put out a how-to PDF? That's something I could put out. It would take a couple hours. I've run the numbers. It'd probably produce between $2,000 and $3,000 right off the bat, and then it would trickle because it'd be up there and it'd be going. And that's probably what I would suggest for you. If you can create the interest, and you know the interest is there, then you would build the how-to. The how-to would be priced at a how-to, you know, anywhere from $20 to $35. Put it in something like Gumroad. Gumroad is an online distributor of content. They take a small percentage for hosting it. They have a payway, a pay gateway. And if you ever do any affiliates, and just to tell you, I'm sure this is something that Rob would be interested in. I know I would if I saw it. Then I can put it onto my hub and sell it to people. I have a greater variety. Static content online is usually a 50-50 split because it doesn't take any more energy for you to do it than I to do it. And that's what I would do. That's if I had something like that and I really enjoyed it and loved it and wanted to play with a small little business conversation, tiny little enterprise, I would do it that way. And the other thing I have to applaud you for is that is a wonderful, tiny experiment that you can play with a lot of these concepts, a lot of these business concepts about how to get a piece of information out there and really show people what it's all about. So, you know, fantastic question, David. I really appreciate that. Naomi, key point about your personage. Great. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. Yeah. Alex, great life hack. Super great life hack. Yeah. Blockchain is going to be huge. Hit the jackpot. That's really cute. Naomi, here we are. How do you approach viewing the massive amount of videos and or podcasts out there related to the regenerative field, of which you are both contributing your voices to? So this is a great question. I think it really is. The question is, how do you approach and digest content? Rob, how do you do that?
Well, truthfully, I read a book recently called The Signal and the Noise, and it was probably one of my top books of all time. It's a more digestible version of Nassim Taleb's Fooled by Randomness, which I also highly recommend if you have a very strong intestinal fortitude. There you go. Yep. And so both really good books. Nate Silver, I think, does a really good job of breaking it down into something that most people can understand. Anyways, the concept is that there's tons of noise out there. And I mean, this is one of the concepts. There's tons of noise out there. And the importance in trying to predict things is understanding which is noise and which is signal. And I use this analogy in my life all the time. And so what I've personally noticed, and this ties really well into running a business actually, is that as the internet becomes more populated, as more people put out more content, as there's more free information out there, it becomes harder and harder and harder, which is, I think, the sentiment you're getting to, Naomi, to distinguish signal from noise. What's good and what's not good? What's worth investing your time, because that's the ultimate asset that we've got, and what's not. And so I honestly go based on word of mouth now. So I don't read the newspaper anymore. I let YouTube and its algorithms try and determine what I want to watch. It's kind of interesting how that goes. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. I generally, in fact, my wife has had to, and I've asked her to do this, she's turned off my Facebook account. I don't have access to it anymore because I found that the news feed there was just driving me wild. Like, it was making me so pessimistic. So I don't pay attention to Facebook. That's just noise, in my opinion. And overall, it works really well. Like, the really important good stuff gets curated by Javan. Javan does a great job curating content, especially funny stuff. So I get at least one or two funny jokes a week from him. And then I've got a couple of other people that have similar mindsets, and they share stuff with me. And so usually those are the things that get to the top of my list. And I just try and delete all the noise because I don't have enough mental space. Plus, I have 2 kids. Before I pass it over to you, Javan, I just want to make a mental note here. So we're halfway through the program. We're going to be on for an hour today, guys. So please keep your questions coming. We love them. If you can, just head on down to the bottom and hit the like button, and it'd make it'd make our days if you could actually share this either on Twitter or Facebook, even though I don't watch Facebook, lots of other people do. And it would definitely help spread the word for this and get some more of those awesome questions. Now over to you, Javan. How do you navigate through the signal and the noise?
Well, first, I think Rob's done a really good job of getting this conversation out, and I think he's done an exceptional job, as he always does. I'm just posting a question I got on Facebook now that it's up. Yeah, there's tons of content out there, Naomi, and I think that's a great question to ask. One of the things I think that's really important, and Naomi knows this personally because we've done some work together on getting together what's called a holistic context, which is understanding your priorities and aligning your life towards your priorities versus aligning them to, I need to have a house or I need to have a farm, which is an equally, how do I want to say this? It's an equally damning goal unless that goal of farming actually supports the person you want to be and how you want to live in the world. And a lot of people kind of get frustrated by that, but inherently in the idea of I want the farm, and me and Rob get a lot of phone call conversations about, hey, Rob, how you doing? I saw you on this great YouTube thing. I'd like to get a permaculture farm, which is funny because there's no such thing as a permaculture farm. There's just a farm that might utilize some permaculture principles. When you start asking questions about what do they really want? Well, I want to be close to food. I want to have great food. I want to be out with my kids, yada, yada. When you're building a farm, and some of you might have done that, you know that that's not always the case. I'm just going to stand up here. So we're going to have sort of a Borg moment while we're zooming up. We tend to not have the priorities necessary sometimes to really understand that there are other aspects to the work that we're doing. And what's important is to have the priorities so you understand what's going on and what's happening. But the other piece, and this gets to your question, Naomi, is we need to know where our weak links are. And this is from Holistic Management created by Alan Savory. We need to know where our weak links are. So in your context, in your life, where is my current weak link in information, in the techniques of grinding it out in the work that I do? If it's the technique of, let's say, farm design, and within farm design, let's say it's water, well, then there's a couple of podcasts, there's a couple of specific podcasts, a couple of specific books that I would direct somebody to. If your weak link in your life within the business context of it is, I don't really know how to sell, which is something that a lot of people come to the Regenerative Business Mentorship program for because they don't know how to sell. Then again, there's resources to go through. But going out into the world, it's kind of like going out into the grocery store and just picking up food and eating it without thinking, am I hungry? What am I hungry for? What does my body need? What do I need to do to create the nutrition in my life? It's the same conversation mentally. And I think curating the information that comes into us is as important as the information itself. Because of a world of noise, we need to have true signals that come through with a lot of value to us. And for me, I think that's a really important piece. Rob, I think you got one more point to add.
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned that all this noise has you could basically interpret it in two different ways. You can look at the noise as making it challenging to get your message out there, and so you kind of brought up the concept of signal and noise, or trying to understand how to cut the crap and get right to the good stuff with regards to content. But the thing is, the analogy here, or the metaphor is that consumers are struggling with the same stuff. How do you know which product to buy? Javan and I have had 3 or 4 conversations in the last 6 months being like, Rob, I just have no freaking clue what to buy for this in this product category. I think it was cell phones was the last one. What do you recommend? Have you done any research on it? Because I don't have the brain power to cut through the crap anymore. And so now I find myself having conversations with what my trusted advisors regarding what type of coffee to buy, or how to brew it, or what kind of phone to get, or whatever. Not that my life revolves around buying products, but we can use this as a really interesting insight with regards to how to promote our services and our businesses, recognizing that word of mouth has always been a really strong, potent way of getting our message out there. But the opportunity that I see now is that as the noise on the internet increases, word of mouth, I believe, is going to become a more profound and powerful way of quickly growing clients and sales.
This is a great point that Rob picks up, and it's getting into a world of tribes of people we know, like, and trust. And when we know, like, and trust these people, we pick up the conversations from them, and then we pass them on, usually in the forms of some sort of meme, some sort of cultural conversation that we can pass on to others. We take a look at our natural gifts, which is a part of an equation that I use within life design. And the equation is to create meaning and purpose in your life, MAP. You need to understand your true nature, so aspects of who you are, your essential qualities, your natural gifts. And there's a process and a pattern I work with people to understand their natural gifts, minus your personal resistance. That's all the programming and the conversation that was given to you by parents and friends and institutions and media, plus a meaningful need out there in the world. You need to find somebody who loves what it is that you do. Now, that natural gifts piece is really about finding the pieces about who you are. And years ago, when I came upon this process and this tool created by 2 psychoanalysts, which I now use with clients, I found when I got my gifts back that promotion and outreach is my number one gift. And for anybody who's ever been a friend or a colleague, we get on the phone, and within a few moments, Rob's like this too, we'll be like, let me tell you about it. And so we start talking about it in the terms of Outliers and Blink and Malcolm Gladwell. That would be called a maven, somebody who passes on information. And so being inside of the core of who you are, I'm a promoter and I do outreach and I do curation naturally, and finding those people in your circles, be it me or Rob, that's really where we can start to curate some good information to have good conversations. So thanks for adding to that, Rob. I think that's a really important piece.
Yeah, John, why don't you hit up some of these Facebook questions you just posted?
Yeah, so we had a great question from Autumn Love, whose real name is Jeanette Hall with Bad Plant Management and Reclamation. She does organic weed control with goats in Southern Alberta. Incredible business, just incredible business. She's a shepherd. She's a modern day shepherd, taking care of the problems that exist within an urban environment. Me and Rob talk about this a lot, that urban problems, because of the percentage of the populace of the world that live in urban centers, are actually a huge market to serve and to help solve problems to. Her question was from Facebook. My question is more about inspiring millennials. I try to customize work plans to cater to everyone's skill set and what they want to get out of the experience, but I'm finding several of the younger labor force are very unaware of themselves and entitled. So I think what she's saying, and if I know what her work and how she works correctly, she goes out there and she does this work, but she has to bring in people to help manage the herd, and she's speaking directly about them. I think, Autumn, I don't think you're on yet, but if you are, let us know through Facebook or otherwise to clarify. Many love the idea of permaculture businesses, but are unaware of actual work. It's a constant reality check. And is it better to ease them into it or shock them with sink or swim? Well, I've definitely got my answer to this, and I'm sure Rob does as well. But when you're working in a farm-based reality, and I did a microgreens business 4 years ago, almost to the date, and we had to bring a couple people in to do some of the work with us. And sometimes it was a bit of a shock about how much work it took because they lived in an inherently helicoptered parent situation where they were given everything in the world. I was to a very certain extent, but I had some great teachers. Depression was one of them. And I was able to understand that actually it takes hard work to get what I want. Nobody's going to give it to me, and going through this. And so now when I have these moments, and we've done this with a number of the projects I've been with, I tend to have really good questions and really good evaluatory moments to see if somebody can hack it. And to that point, I say that your employment or your operation within this project is 100% probationary until a certain marker is passed. And that's, I feel you're a good fit. And so it's not that you are the best at this. It's not that you're the worst at this. It's not that you're not doing it. You might be doing it. I use this term, and this is a term that Rob and I use all the time. Are you a good fit? Not bad, not good, just is. And recently, this happened to friends of mine who had a farm. They run a farm on Salt Spring. It attracts a lot of the hippies. So they're millennials and they're hippies. It's kind of a double whack. And great young kid, really enthusiastic, really excited. They had a great nickname for him about like how enthusiastic it was. And they had to sit him down within the first week because they had these markers, they had these metrics. So having the metrics, Autumn, of who's great, who's amazing, and how quickly do you need to see that to be happy is where I would go. And then secondarily, what these guys did is set them down and say, and the verbiage of this is incredible, saying, we'll call him John. John, we love you. You're amazing. You're a great addition to the farm. However, I don't know if this is a good fit for you because of the amount of work it takes to provide the value we need to keep you on board and to pay you and to feed you. We'd love for you to be here for the entire summer, but if you can't come up to the level we need, you're probably not a good fit for this farm, and you should probably just tour around and have a fun time because you may just be in this place where you just want to enjoy the summer. And man, he buckled down. Next day, he was the best worker. Didn't matter if he partied all night. He woke up and he did the work and he did it well. And so, Autumn, I would say it's not about inspiring anybody. And this is probably a shock to some people. It's not about inspiring people. It's not even about motivating people. It's about setting boundaries. It's about saying, this is what I do. This is the work I do. There's an opportunity for you to learn an incredible skill that nobody else has the opportunity to because there's no modern day shepherds. If you would like to come into that, having evaluatory questions, who you are, what was the hardest day of work you ever had? What was the easiest day of work you had? What's your ideal job in terms of workload? Things to get a sense and gauge about who are these people and how do they work? And then say, great, you're on probation. We'll see if you've got one day. No, I'm going to give you the absolute worst jobs on the very first day because I need to know if you can hack it. If you can do that, great. You're on board. I'd love to work with you. If you can't, no fault, no foul. All the best to you and good luck. And in that way, we're just trying to find a good fit. We do this with clients. We do this with partners and colleagues. And Rob and I took a full, Rob, I think it was like 2 or 3 years to find this Regenerative Business Mentorship program as one of the really good fits. We ended up working together and teaching together and developing a few things, but this was actually the first one. So waiting for good fit is a really important aspect. And it's one of the principles that we use in Regenerative Business Mentorship. Rob?
Yeah, I only have 2 things to add to that. That was brilliant, Javan. And Javan really touched on this, but I'm going to say it in a slightly different way. So much of what goes wrong in a business, and now that I'm aware of this, I'm hyper aware of it, is a lack of expectation setting. And so it's funny, I just signed a contract the other day with a solar company here in Regina, and they sent me this contract, and you could tell it was written by a lawyer, which is fine. I have nothing against lawyers, but there was nothing in this contract outside of just a whole bunch of legalese that was protecting the solar company from I'm not sure what. And there was nothing in there about what they were going to achieve, how I was going to judge the success of this project, and the types of metrics that I was going to use to determine whether working with them was successful. And so I said, hey guys, let's just get rid of the legalese. Let's use a different contract. I'll write it up. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to expect from you at the back end of this when I pay you for this, and how I'm going to judge whether you guys are successful or not. And it was 2 pages, really simple, 2 signatures on the bottom, and it's done. So whether it's employees, whether it's clients, whether it's any part of business, so much of business is setting clear expectations. And I think that as employers, I mean, I saw this for years growing up in my dad's cake factory. Setting expectations. We always have what are called unspoken expectations. They're things that we expect everyone else should know, including millennials, but that we don't communicate to them. And I think millennials for sure have a totally different take on the world. Their point of view is as different as it possibly can be. And so for baby boomers or people that are just after the baby boomer generation who are still of that mindset that you gotta hustle, and then all of a sudden you end up with a bunch of millennials, there's 2 conflicting points of view there. And so I think it's really important to get expectations set. The last thing before I'm going to pass it over to Javan is there's a book called Quiet Leadership. And it's all about how to, Javan's got it on his bookshelf. I think I can see it because his camera is so clear. Anyways, Quiet Leadership, written by David Rock. It's the first book that he wrote. The second one, which Javan was mentioning, was Your Brain at Work. And it's all about how to ask the right questions to encourage people to have their own insights. So the 20th century way of managing people was you tell them what to do or you threaten to fire them. The 21st century way of managing people is to actually help them to think about what they have to achieve, help them to have their own insights. And that's what the whole premise behind Quiet Leadership is. Javan, I think you wanted to add something to this.
I did. So when we're talking about expectations, when we're talking about setting conversations, one of the things, and I do this with almost all my life design clients, is I talk about sovereignty, about having sovereignty. And this is very much true for folks that are in the environmental field, quote unquote liberals, or just folks that really care. If you're not somebody who likes labels, folks who tend to care and have a bit of a heroic complex, a savior complex, kind of fall within this. They take on other people's problems. And one of the most important things that I think that we need to keep in mind is that there's only 3 types of businesses. There's my business, your business, and nature or God's business. There's only one sphere that I can control. That's mine, my business. I can't control your business. I can't control nature or God's business. I think what we're seeing right now in terms of storms, in terms of climate variability, it's pretty on point. Now, for Autumn and for others that are thinking about their programs, they're thinking about their clients, they're thinking about their employees, their colleagues, you cannot change, improve, empower anybody. They all have to make that decision for themselves. So yes, you can set expectations, and ultimately it's up to them if they decide to do it or not do it. One of the ways that we help people understand selling, which is usually a part that people really find troublesome in this type of work, is that it's always about just staying in your business, which is, if you'd like to work with me, great. If you don't want to work with me, great. We're interested in a good fit. And so trying not to take on everybody else's business, if they're doing well, if they're not doing well, trying to manage somebody else's expectations or economics, stepping back from that, and just being within your own business is a really important piece. You can help a lot of people, but staying in your business allows you to have sovereignty and allows you to be sane. Take it from a guy who was at the end of his chronic suicidal depression, was diagnosed with eco-depression, which was the psychiatrist, psychologist, can't remember, who said, oh yeah, I've read about this. It's when you think the world is going to shit. It's like, it's not something I think of. I think it's something that I'm observing in real time. So again, that his conversation is none of my business. And I always go back to Anthony Hopkins, the actors, and the polymath. I just watched an incredible video about him composing a symphony, talked about, which is what other people think of me is none of my business. And this goes for all of us. What other people think of us is none of our business. What they want to do with our businesses, none of our business. If it affects us, we can speak to them, but ultimately has nothing to do with us. So I think that's a really important piece. So where are we now, Rob? I think we're, question from Alex. I like the Javan. That's good. Javan. I like it.
Sounds a lot very eloquent.
Right? It seems like the French.
That you say
Alex,
while we're sipping wine.
Right. I find that the Wisconsin, Daniel Housley, when we worked together here, would always go, Javan. So hopefully, Alex, you're saying it in a much more sophisticated way. Sorry, what was that, Rob?
Javan is not quite as elegant as Javon.
Javon. Yeah, I like it. You mentioned a book called More Beautiful Questions. What would you say is one of the most beautiful, meaningful questions to ask clients as a permaculture consultant? Great question. This is probably worth the entire, when we gave this to the folks in the RBM program, the one person, and this was in like the third week, they said, this is worth the entire value of the program. We're going to give it to you. First and foremost, what's your situation? So what's going on in your life? What's going on? Like, why are you calling me? What brought you to me? Second, what's the problem you're dealing with right now? What's the actual issue? What, after we work together, afterwards, so after post-consultant, what needs to be fixed, solved, improved? What needs to be improved? Third, what is the implication? What's been the cost of not solving that problem up to date? And what's going to be the cost into the future? So what's going to be the issue of not having that problem solved? And then finally, what's the value of getting on the other side of that problem, of getting into a place to where that problem is solved? That series of questions has been the most profound way to inquire into a problem and see if I'm actually a good fit to solve the problem. Rob and I field a lot of sales calls. And even for this program that's coming up tomorrow, the Regenerative Business Mentorship program, we turned away 3 people because we actually got into their problem. It was like, oh, you actually need a bit more cognitive work. You need to work on your limiting beliefs. And Rob sent them to me because that's some of the work I do. I work on long-seated programming that's not working for people because I've done it. I got myself out of 20 years of depression and continue to help people to really have a strong mental mindset. So those would be the 4 questions that I would use. Rob, what's our next question?
Next question. So Josiah Wallingford asked, if you have not already done so, could you give us some advice on online marketing digital materials?
Beauty. Rob, you want to start off?
Yeah, and I think this comes back down to the signal and the noise conversation a little bit. I think it's in some ways it's getting harder to get online products sold. And it's ironic that the question has come up. I was just speaking with a good colleague of mine who has a different business model than mine. Curtis Stone is actually a colleague of both of Javan and myself. And, Curtis is crushing it in so many ways. And really, if you look at what Curtis Stone has been doing, and you may love what he's doing and you may disagree with some of his statements, that's okay. That's actually part of what he's doing. He's being truthful. He's being honest with regards to what his thoughts and beliefs are. And that's so important. In fact, I just did a series with Tad Hargrave for Marketing for Hippies on my YouTube channel, and those videos are up there, and you can check out the video on point of view marketing. Curtis embraces his point of view extremely well. And what that does is it instantly changes the conversation. So people that disagree with him disappear, and people that agree with him come toward him. So often we try and skirt around what our point of view is about any of these subjects that we're all dealing with in the regenerative field. And so what I would say about online marketing is that it's really about putting out 99% of your content. You have to have some way of content generation. You have to have some way of attracting people to what it is that you do. And the majority of it has to be value. It can't be blatant marketing, blatant attempts at trying to sell your stuff all the time. You're trying to create a conversation, although it's very strange to create a conversation with a video camera, but that's what you're trying to do with YouTube and Facebook, and Twitter is just 148 characters. And it's a long game. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And what Curtis has done, what Justin Rhodes is doing right now, what Jeff Lawton has done over the long haul is they've built up the reputation. So one of the principles in regenerative mentorship is this concept of being profitable. And within this concept of being profitable, of course, you have to be profitable if you're going to run a business, right? What a silly principle. But within that principle is this rule of 1/3. And so our value is broken up into our reputation, how good we are at grinding it out, and the sale. And so most of us who go into our own businesses are technicians. We love grinding it out, and we go into our own business so that we can grind it out all the time. So we don't have to work for somebody else doing stuff we don't want to do. But what we don't realize is we have to get really good at sales, which is what Javan was hitting on. And we also have to get really good at building our reputation. And so what Curtis has done for the last 2 years is he's built his reputation, and he's done such a good job of it that every once in a while when he mentions his book or he mentions his online course or his paper pot seeding mechanism, it goes viral. Why? Because he's built it. And I'm just going to leave you guys with a quote. There's a quote I just read from Jeff Bezos, which is that an overnight success takes 10 years. So we only see the result of the overnight success. We don't see all of the hard work, sweat, and tears that has gone in, 2, 5, 10 years before. And so it seems like things go viral and instantaneous, but there's always a build-up to it. Javan?
I think, and Curtis has been incredible. He's been part of masterminds that we've all been at, and we've all contributed to each other's successes. And what Curtis has done exceptionally well is what Vaynerchuk talks about, which is jab, 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 right punch, or right hook, which is offer value, offer value, offer value, engage, 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 interact, 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 get a sense of what's out there, and then make an offer. What a lot of people tend to do backwards is they put out a product and they go, okay, this is what I got. Where is everybody? In today's Internet of Things, you have to go out and build a base, build a conversation, or tap into a different hub, a different spoke, and then speak to those people, interact with those people so that they can know, like, and trust you, and then make an offer. When you have something like YouTube where you can create a platform of conversation about what you do and how you do it, people get a sense of really quickly about what you do. And I think the other thing is that coming into a desert, and Curtis is a young man who felt there wasn't a lot of opportunity, who showed that there was opportunity, who broke a myth about something that we all fundamentally have in the common programming: farming isn't profitable. Showed that that was all not true, showed that you could get into it for a low amount of capital infrastructure. And then over time has started to tell people, yeah, and I believe this, and I believe this, and I believe this. This is what's called your point of view. Your point of view gets more people towards you than anything else because they know, like, and trust you. If you have a myriad of massage therapists that you can potentially choose from, the person who plays the music you like, who kind of looks like you, or maybe you're one of those people that likes getting massaged by a person from the opposite sex of the person you like, or if you're same sex, that kind of, conversation. That's what you're going for because of your point of view, because you enjoy it. That point of view really helps to polarize people, as Rob was talking to. Everyone who comes to your business is a yes, a maybe, or a no. Compared to this, the confused mind says no. So you put these together, don't confuse the mind, tell them exactly what you do. And it was during one of our masterminds where we were speaking about, with Curtis. Curtis was like, I don't know what to call myself. I'm the urban farmer. I'm not the urban farmer. I'm like, you are the profitable urban farmer. No, I can't do that. I can't do that. Well, years later, Curtis has called himself the profitable urban farmer. Fantastic. Like, he just came down to who he was. And this is some of the best advice I've heard of. I've heard of is, call what you do what you do. When I created my new design company, I called it All Points Land Design, not resilient permaculture, not permaculture acreages. I called it All Points Design. If I ask any of you what I do, what are you going to say? Well, I guess he does all points of design. Rob does an adaptive habitat. Even in that, he's selecting for people who understand what adaptive mean and habitat mean. That's a very specific choice. I think it's an incredible way of going about your business. So we've come to the end of our time. So I think what we'll do is we'll tell you a little bit about the program, why we think it's great. And we're going to close with a couple of the opportunities we see in the regenerative business field, because we're right at time, but we really wanted to pass that on. There's been a couple of questions about that. Rob?
Yeah, so in terms of a couple of opportunities that we see, I think that there is an unlimited demand for, if you build it, for people to do basically what I'm doing. So consulting in the resilient homes, acreages, and farms. Now you need to have a lot of skills to get to that point, but those skills are all available. I think that there are incredible opportunities within, farming. I think Joel Salatin says there's never been a better time to get into farming. I think that farming right now is at the lowest point that it's ever been, from least number of young farmers, farmers that are actually producing aren't making any money. And you never want to get into a game when it's at the peak. And so right now, I think that with a few very specific strategies, I think farming can be an incredible opportunity. And then the last one that I'm going to share, because I know we're running out of time, I've said this for years. I think the tea industry, specifically for birthing mothers, basically selling raspberry leaf, sea buckthorn, and calendula in various forms to anybody within the birthing niche. I love businesses that are really easy to niche into very, very tight spaces. And so knowing that you're going to be providing teas or herbal medicinals to midwives is awesome as an example of a really tight niche, because you know exactly where to find those people: midwives, doulas, birth courses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Javan, why don't you give us your top three?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I'm going to save them for the end. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about the program, and then I'm going to end with the ones that I think that are hot right now. So you guys have had an experience a little bit of this format, and this is the format that we use in the program. And it's one of the reasons we like this so much, is that we get a chance to talk face to face. We use a tool called Zoom so we can see everybody and talk to everybody. And we alternate in weeks with the Regenerative Business Mentorship Program, the level 1 that's starting tomorrow. We go through principles 1 through 6 of 12. We have a level 2 that's starting in January. Folks who are in the level 1 have the ability to go to the level 2. We've had an incredible amount of connectivity with this program. We've had a lot of good success. A number of the folks have gone from charging what they've charged to tripling, and at one point 10xing what they charged and their output. They have sales processes now. They have a good sense of what they're doing. It's been pretty incredible to watch it, and we'll show folks a link so that way they can go and take a look at it at the end of the conversation here. If you just go to Verge Permaculture, you can also find it on there. So over the 12 weeks, we talk about 6 principles. It comes out in a podcast, 20 minutes or less. We have a chance to invite questions, Q&As on Wednesday. We take those questions, and just in this format on Fridays at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard, 4 p.m. Mountain Standard, or wherever you are in the world, we then talk about these questions. Me and Rob, we go back and forth. We have a teaching assistant who puts up links. Everybody shares. We talk about our successes, because you need to focus on those to have more of those. And we get an incredible sense of community. On the back end, we have a closed community where we can speak back and forth, share resources. And then the next week, we have what's called open season, which is just that, open season question. Ask us anything. Ask us about our taxes. Ask us about how we file, why we file. Ask us about how we consult. Ask us about the tools we use. Ask us about our greatest failures. Ask other people about them. And we have the ability to really share that information in a very generous, open fashion. And that was the big thing we got from folks. It's like, I can't believe you shared this much. The other thing that I think people really get out of this program, and it's a bit of a, I don't know if you call it a default on me and Rob or a defect, is that once we have a student in a program, we think about our students constantly.
All the time.
During the program, go ahead.
All the time.
All the time. And what Rob was saying, like after the program, is like, are you thinking about these guys all the time? I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about these guys all the time. Which meant the mushroom producers and the coffee grower, we were like, have you guys seen what Sigmatic is doing? There's no reason why you guys can't do that here in Canada. And it was like, oh, we hadn't thought about that. Or two of our participants were like, you absolutely need to be together. So we made them accountability partners. So in this program, you have an accountability partner, helps you to really connect and understand and push yourself forward. So it's rinse and repeat. We do a podcast, open Q&A, podcast, open Q&A, back and forth for 12 weeks. Lots of accountability, really good resources. We've had a great time doing it. Starts tomorrow. There's still space available. I think we've got 2 or 3 spots left. And it would be great if anybody's super interested, send me an email, send Rob an email, Javan@allpointsdesign.ca, Rob at Verge or Adaptive?
Rob at vergepermaculture.ca is great.
Fantastic. And take a look on the Verge page to take a look at some of the testimonials. We've been getting tons of testimonials, video testimonials recently. And I think if you're ready to level up, to take some of this information that you heard us today, expand upon it, dive into it, might be a really good fit for you. If it's not, fantastic. We want you to be stoked to be in the program. The opportunities I see right now are crouched in a great analogy that Rob keeps using. And it's that there is a massive tsunami tidal wave coming towards all of us. It's come towards me. It's come towards Rob. It's come towards Curtis. And it's that we have a populace that is moving conventional, traditional conversations mentally. And they're moving into the idea that interactions with the system that keeps you alive is probably a good idea. Which means the way that they're thinking about business, being in business, accessing businesses, supporting enterprises is changing as well. If you've been watching social media, there's just been a bomb that's been dropped, and it's from a scientific level, which I think is turning a lot of heads. My family sent it to me, which is that there's a nutrient density collapse happening right now in the food we have because of a number of factors. And that conversation has been alive in permaculture for 20, 25, 35, 45 years. It's been out there. And I say 45 pre-Mollison because Masanobu Fukuoka was talking about it. We've been seeing the steady decline of nutrient density food, and we're going to see it more so, which means that there is a rising tide of people that are ready for you, me, Rob, and everybody else to jump in and offer what is in our hearts to them in a business that is professionally offered. And so first and foremost, if you're in this field already, you have an advantage over every other traditional business. And I mean that honestly. The businesses I've worked with, my business, all of our businesses are off the hook. Rob is scheduling into next year. And I don't mean like 2018 into like a 6, 9, 12 month conversation. I'm doing, if I'm doing something similar. I've got a number of clients who are closing deals for a year long, sometimes a 5-year long project. And you have to think in that type of conversation, because you may be thinking, well, if Rob and Javan are doing that, there's no room for me. If I take on one client for the next 5 years, I don't have room for anybody else. That means there's room for all of you if you're consultants. This idea of scarcity is utter bogus. There's a number of people that are waking up with money and resources to really transform land. And if you're of the mindset that you want to do that and do that well, and if there's a technical aspect you need to skill up on, or if there's a mental aspect, or if there's a business aspect, a sales aspect, then drive at it and do it. Farming, first and foremost, value-added products, first and foremost, and understanding the great wave that is turning away from a carbohydrates-based diet. This is a massive wave. Folks are learning that over-refined carbohydrates, over-refined sugars are just not really good for them. The Oncology Society of British Columbia said 4 years ago that cancer is a disease of inflammation and inflammation is a disease of activity in food. They made the direct line of sight between the two. So when you think about that, it's filtering down to the mentality of people that how I eat and how I operate is actually how I have health. And most folks get down to quality of life is the only thing that's important eventually in their life. Some people do it too late when they're 80. Me and Rob have had this ongoing conversation for the last 15 years because I've been a bit of a broken record. The only thing that's important is quality of life. The only thing that's important is quality of life. Folks are waking up to that. And you and I'm talking to all of you. I'm not talking to Rob. I'm talking to you folks. Have the tools in some way, shape, or form to help people. One of the participants in the business design program that we just ran the last level one, she loves the intersection between farm design and science and taking a look at the nutrient deficiency in people and building systems that address the nutrient deficiency in people. You can't get much more specialized than that. That is a genetic, genome-based type of designer that is looking at your phenotype. She's looking at your full genome to understand what it is you need to be healthy and how to grow it on your plot of land. That is just a niche that I would have never thought about until she told us the pieces. And in a conversation with her, I said, listen, this is incredible. This is a business you need to jump into. She's gone that way. She's starting to see the response. But like we were talking about with Josiah and Curtis, you need to put yourself out there. If you're not going to hang the shingle, nobody's going to, find you because you're thinking about it inside of your head. So one of the things I have to say is that who you are and how you operate is actually your best asset to offer.
Yep.
Secondly, if you have something that addresses a specific problem about urbanity, Autumn Love, Jeanette Hall, BAD, I think grazing management, such a great name, taking care of problems inside urban centers, fantastic business plan. I can almost guarantee that she's undercharging her services, but fantastic business service. Anything value added. And I mean this because you have a lot of farmers who are still selling exceptional food and they don't know what to do with it. So if you have a mind for sales, great. Jump in there and say, great, I'll buy this wholesale. I'll value add it. I'll take it to commercial commercial kitchen. And then I'll offer it back as a sale product. Rob always likes to talk about the Light Cellar, this incredible business in Calgary that was specialty food, superfoods. And when they opened, they had no prices on the products because people wanted it. They knew what the trend was. So the second piece of that is whatever you love, whatever you're good at, go to the desert and offer it in the desert. So Alberta is a great example of an entire province that has been very much greenies in the closet. We talk about LGBTQ being in the closet, but there's a lot of people who just have senses of who they are and what they want to be that are in the closet, offering to those people. And Rob's been really successful at that in terms of education. So just to recap, whatever you're good at is already the first business you should start with. Whatever the meaningful need is within the area that you're in is where you should start with. And you should look at the interaction between the two. What's the Venn diagram? This is true for digital. This is true for in-person. Secondarily, if you're really focused on the land, I think value-added products are huge. And I think wildcrafting is massive. The idea that Daniel Vitalis can sell a small bottle of pine pollen for $50, $60 should show us that there is an untapped market for this conversation. I think that's where I'll leave that conversation. Rob, anything you want to add before we wrap?
Just an insight that I had while you were talking there. I'm surrounded by farmers that are producing incredible product. And I think they're probably one of the best people to take this program. But can you actually imagine what the food landscape is going to look like in 2, maybe 3 years, but probably more like 2 years, with the exponential uptake on the ketogenic diet and the desire for grass-finished meat products that have an omega-3 to 6 ratio? I'm really, really glad that I have all these wonderful relationships with the farmers because they're going to give me first right of refusal on their pork when it's $5,000 a pig, which is what they probably should be charging because you're not actually eating pork, you're eating anti-cancer at that point if it's properly raised. The opportunity, people are waking up. I mentioned this at the beginning. My dad's business went bankrupt because we produced $1 million order for Walmart and they ended up rejecting it. The Walmarts, the Costcos, all these massive box stores, the Amazons, that's one direction. There's a whole subset of people that want to go in the opposite direction. And there's not enough people to fill those niches. And it lives within the regenerative niche, which is why we want to see people like you guys thrive. So if you're interested in the program, I put a link below. I think there's just one last question I wanted to quickly address, which is that if you haven't started a business yet, is the program still appropriate? Yes, it can be. You're going to have principles to think about with regards to how to operate your business when you finally do go and design it. We do have a how to start program as an initial kickoff to the program. Everybody gets that free e-course as part of it. But I would say that people that have been in their business for a little while, grinding it out with some pain points, are going to get the most value out of it. But that's not to say that you can't precog the design of your business with some basic principles.
Thanks, Rob. That's a great piece. And we've had a couple of people who were just with an idea for a business. They were kind of understanding it. I think as a broad stroke, if you're totally baffled about where to start, this isn't the best place. If you want, drop me a line. We can have a 20-minute phone call. I can kind of assess where you're at and I can see if I can help you or if there's other programs. But if at least you have an idea, a thought, you want to be in the space, you kind of want to develop it a bit, you want to get some feedback, you want to learn some better principles, you want to learn the things that we wish we had learned 10 years ago, that we worked it out. I think Rob said, well, I'll let Rob talk what his number is, but I worked out to spending about $120,000 of my time, money, and energy to learn what I learned today. then this is probably a good fit. I'll close with this. My good buddy, Brandon Bauer, one of the foremost permaculturists nobody knows about. He dropped out of university, dropped out of college. He found his way to Orcas Island. He worked with the Bullock brothers, and the Bullock brothers PDC at that time was 3 weeks. It was $2,000. This is going on 20 years. And he saved up for 2 years. He did everything in his world. He was homeless for the time because he knew the value of that education. And he knew that he would use it more than the education that he had in university. So he saved up that money. He went into the permaculture design course of the Bullock brothers, stayed with them and interned with them for, I think, like 6 years or something. And then is now one of the most adept designers and food growers. He touches land and it feels like it sprouts food. He took the time, money, and energy to put into something because he knew what he would get out of it. There was an individual in our last program, and he didn't tell us this until a couple of days ago when he sent me an email. And what I didn't know, and he was always kind of coming into the program from like different places. He was never in the same place. And it should have been a clue, is that he invested in the program and decided to live in his car for a couple of months to afford the program. And at the end of this email that he sent me, which I've got right in front of me, is this conversation of, I left that part out and the workshop, all the rest of it, so I could afford the program. Bringing home the concept that you can never assume what a client can or can't afford. Concept that I will have in deep faith considering the demographics I work with. But I did it and it was totally worth it. And if that's a helpful antidote, please feel free to use it. So I really thank him for that. I've done this many of times where I didn't have the money to do something. I just said, okay, I need to do this. I need to be in it. And so I went out and I took on that responsibility. It may not work for you right now. It may not be a fit for you now. We're thinking we might run it again in the spring. We're not sure. If you go on to the regenerative, Verge Permaculture, Rob put the link up there. If you go into schedule, the little tab, it'll say, can't make it this time, want to be informed of the next time. You can put it down there. But if not now, then when? If you actually have the time, money, and energy, or if you need to stretch a little bit, if not now, when? I think if I could have, I would have spent this money 10 years ago. It would have been well worth the time, money, and effort, as all of the testimonials have said. So feel free to take a look, and it'd be great to work with you. We can have a good fit call over the next couple of days. Tomorrow is an intro call. So it's just us introducing each other. You're not going to miss any time, money, or energy within the value you get from the program. If you start a day or two late, it's not a big problem. And just thanks so much for coming out. This was actually a lot of fun. Rob and I are thinking of doing these monthly for a bit. So I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Really interesting, this whole YouTube live thing. First time doing it, and I think I like it quite a bit. So anyways, we're signing off. So thanks so much, guys. Make sure you hit the like button below and shoot me an email if you have any additional questions or comments, and maybe we can address that in the next show. So have a great evening, guys.
Thanks, everybody.